I met Mark in 1981.
I believe I was 21 or 22 at the time.
I was living in San Francisco. I was living on Larsen Street between Sutter and Bush. I had a studio apartment. It was a nice studio, small.
I was living in a studio apartment that I was subletting from some friends, a guy by the name of Mark Morris, and it was Noe, the first block of Noe Street.
I think I had just started playing solo piano at private parties around I think it was around 1980 or 81. I had had some jobs playing solo piano in restaurants in San Francisco, but I wasn't really doing anything super creatively.
I had placed an ad, and I think it was in the Bay Area Reporter, I'm pretty sure it was, looking for someone to form a partnership, because I had been writing poems and felt like they could be lyrics.
I do remember Mark had placed an ad, and he was looking for a pianist / composer, if I remember correctly. And it was worded in a certain way that just had a real appeal to me and sort of spoke to me and kind of described who I was. I think Mark described himself as an energetic young singer, lyricist, and looking for a similar musician to collaborate with.
I needed somebody to work with. I really had this drive to create music, but I wasn't a musician. But I felt like I could express myself through words, and I thought of myself as a storyteller.
Yeah, because generally writing lyrics was really hard for me. So I think that was part of the allure, actually, now that I'm reflecting on meeting Mark. It's like, oh, somebody will write the lyrics for me. Because I write music very easily. I can just sit down and, music comes out. But writing the lyrics is hard.
I went over to Tom's studio apartment on Larsen Street, and so I had to take a couple of buses to get over there, and I found it, and it was in the Polk area, which is was at the time a very seedy part of town. I remember pulling up, or rather walking up to his apartment and ringing the doorbell, not knowing really what to expect.
I would imagine we met at my place on Larsen Street, my studio, because I had an upright piano, an old beat-up upright, which I think I paid $50 for.
So he was well-mannered, and he offered me tea and was very warm and welcoming. And there at the foot of his bed was this beat-up old piano. And I do remember thinking, this guy is really serious about his piano because it's in his bedroom.
He was very energetic, in a good way, young. I mean, he's 4 years younger than me, I believe, but back then that seemed like a big age difference.
And I remember being excited and feeling lucky, like I hope I get to work with this guy. So then after leaving, I think I just had a lot of hope. And that I had found someone that, we've talked about it over the years, it's like having a relationship, with another person. And so a lot of those feelings, I think, were like that, right? Where there's all this hope and all these questions, like, is this going to really work? And if it does, how cool is that, right? So I remember being very excited and full of hope, and I hadn't felt that way with the other couple of people that I had met up with.
I mean, I do remember Mark left a lot of lyrics because I wrote a lot of songs after the first meeting. I have a very strong recollection of writing 4 songs in one weekend. Like, there was just this instant, click with Mark's lyrics. And for some reason, I think the first song I wrote was Fancy Dancer. I'm taking a stab here. I'm not sure, not sure, but I think that was one of them. Writing About You might have been one of the four, but there were like four. I distinctly remember writing 4 songs in the course of one weekend.
As I recall, I think it was maybe just a couple of weeks after we first met that Tom called and said he had already written a couple of songs, and that already blew me away, and that hope was getting even stronger knowing that. And so when I went over there and he played them for me, I was blown away.
Because I just remember our process. When I would write a song, I was just chomping at the bit for Mark to hear the new song. So I would imagine with 4 under my belt, I'd be like, "Oh, Mark, get over here." Just in general, then and now, I don't wake up generally with like melodies or music, in my ear or in my brain. It comes out when I sit at the piano. I'll sit at the piano and just, it's like I channel it.
Well, when we first met, that was our intention to be a songwriting team. But as I was also learning the songs and singing, I used to have a vending machine route, and I drove a van, and I put a radio behind me. I strapped it onto the rack, and I would listen to our music, and I was learning it and singing it.
Well, I've always been a reluctant performer. So, and with Mark, I loved writing songs together. I didn't really want to perform. But Mark was really like enthusiastic, not only as a songwriter, but as a, wannabe performer.
I was encouraged by friends, and then I think also I had this kind of secret desire to be a singer, but I didn't really have any foundation for it. I didn't really have any training other than being in choirs and stuff like that.
Because, I also, at the time, I also had a lot of stage fright. So, I didn't really want to have to deal with that. But, you're writing songs, how else are they going to get out there if you don't perform them? So, in retrospect, it makes sense, like, yeah, let's get these out there.
So I didn't think of myself as a singer until later in the process, when the songs were really so much part of our everyday life, and I felt like they were stories coming from me, and I really loved singing them. So I think it was just kind of a natural progression that we needed to get our songs out there, to get them heard. And I think through most of it, our thought was that somebody would want to record our songs, and we worked toward that. But I think the reason we ended up performing was to get out there so people could actually hear the songs and then hopefully want to do one.
He wanted to get out there. Let's get these songs out there, and let's do the PR and whatever. So I kind of like went along for the ride, and we got some gigs, not a lot, but they were fairly high profile for San Francisco.
Fanny's on 18th Street. We did perform in other places, but those are the performances that really stuck with me, because it was such a high energy time, both in the city and our lives, and just in our partnership and writing and all of that. And it was just a cool little place that I'd seen other people perform in, that I never kind of thought, I'll perform there someday.
Because Fanny's was, to me, the premier cabaret in San Francisco. So to perform at Fanny's was, to me, a coup. We also did a thing at the boarding house, which was, excuse me, a major club at the time.
Looking at the pictures, does bring back some memories. Certainly the way we were dressing. We were very conscious of what we were wearing and the kind of, style we were trying to put out there. I remember being blown away by the house. I think I was in love with that house. I mean, it was just this most amazing mansion, and Larkin kept it in period. And you know, I always felt like don't touch this and don't touch that, because it really was such a cool time capsule. I do remember Tom playing the piano, and I think once again it was one of those where the piano was not in tune, because it sat right there in a bay window.
I do remember this one night where we did some guerrilla photo shoot on, I want to say Minna Street or Natoma Street, south of Market. It was like off of 6th Street or something. It was like, you know, wino country as we called it at the time, or Herb Cain called it. And we, oh my God, Mark spray painted this brick wall and it said Sean Larsen. And we, like, you know, posed in front of this brick wall and took some pictures. It was like night. It was like right next to some liquor store, you know, mom and pop store. And I have vivid memories of that, because I think I was probably like fearing for my life or something. You know, it was kind of Skid Row. So that I remember. And I remember David Gray, so he was a great photographer.
Yes, well, I remember David Gray coming up to the record plant with us one time to take some photos, and we actually used one of those photos in our ad for playing at Fanny's. And I don't remember which studio. I remember we did some shots outside of one of the studios, and I think we did the shots around the piano in Studio B, if I remember right, and it had a big star filter.
I hope I threw those clothes out afterwards.
Prior to meeting Tom, I had begged over the course of a couple of months to get a job at the Sausalito record plant. I had read about it and I wanted to work there. I wanted to get my foot in the door. And so I went up pretty much once a week and talked to the manager there. Now her name slips my mind. And I said, I'll take anything, and I think I was so persistent that she finally wore down and said, okay, you can be a janitor. And so I did that for about 3 months. Now, she hired me when the owner was gone, but when he came back, he was furious that she had hired someone. And so he did a white glove test in one of the studios, a literal, put a white glove on and went like that and reached way up high and found some dust and fired me on the spot. And so I was heartbroken because I loved working there. It was amazing. Even just being a janitor, you know, I mean, I got to work in this world-famous recording studio. So although I didn't work there anymore, I had made friends with Mark Morris, the guy that I was subletting my apartment from, who I had played some of the music that Tom and I had written, and he was impressed and offered to let us record there free of charge. Because one of the benefits of being an engineer at the record plant is you get, you know, if the studio's not being used, you can use it. And so that's how we came to record at the record plant.
I mean, we had 2 or 3 recording sessions at record plant, but this was one where we got bumped into, you know, a different studio, and the piano that we spontaneously recorded on was also the piano that Stevie Wonder recorded songs in the key of life on, if I'm not mistaken. The piano was a little out of tune, but who cares? Stevie played it. And I'm gonna do, this is an aside here, but I have this thing that pianos retain the greatness of certain pianists who have played them. So, like Stevie, like, it kind of like played itself. I mean, obviously I played it, but there was like Stevie in there somehow. I'm not saying I play like Stevie Wonder, but there was just something about that piano. So I definitely remember that. I just remember it was a real high, and you know, I was like totally on, Mark was totally on, because you know, I'm not always totally on when I perform, because I have some stage fright that nobody notices, but I feel like it affects me, and it's even worse when I'm recording. So, but for some reason I just remember it was just like, we were just like on fire, and I think the recording, you know, reflects that.
What I remember is, number one, we were really pretty upset that we didn't get our studio, but since we weren't paying for it and another legitimate group was paying for it, we got bumped to Studio C, which was formerly known as The Pit. And if you do a little research about the Sausalito record plant, you'll read some really incredible history about that studio. But anyhow, yes, we were a little upset, but Mark set us up in the pit in Studio C with this amazing grand piano and a little 2-track analog recorder, and took levels on us real quick and then said, "You're on your own, I've got to go and do my work." And so he hit the play button, and Tom and I had been performing and were really well rehearsed, and we just had an amazing night in that recording studio. And I think we probably could have gone for a couple more hours if we hadn't run out of tape.
I was going to say a year and a half, but it's got to be longer than that, because we wrote about 50 songs. So, but the dates I have in my mind are 81 to 83.
I think we worked together for about 2.5 years. And I think we wrote just over 50 songs. And we were very prolific for that period. And I think we were really starting to hit our stride.
Well, that's including, you know, there's some instrumentals.
Yes.
Remember Song for Max?
Right, right. Yep.
But I include that as Sean Larsen because it was a result of Sean Larsen and Mark Larsen that inspired me to write even the instrumentals that I wrote at the time. Oh, it's hard. There's so many great songs. I mean, Simple Man is the first one that always comes to mind, because that was the one that we and everyone else said, "Oh, that's gonna be, if anything, is a hit, it would be that one." So that's the one we tended to focus on the most. But it's not necessarily my favorite. I mean, I listened to all these songs recently in the last year or so, and songs that like jumped out at me were, I'm blanking on the names. Hearts That Can't Be Touched is like amazing. Writing About You has always been one of my favorites. It has sort of a little bit of a Bacharach feel, kind of a classic groove. So I've always maintained that that's one of my favorites. Some of these songs like Look Over My Shoulder, if that's the right name. I don't know, it's hard to pick 2 or 3. I guess I just did.
Which songs are my favorites? There are a couple of standouts, and I think particularly for what they mean to me. And Home on the Farm would have to be it, because that's my family and where I grew up, and even listening to it today, I think it's held its meaning for me. So that would be one of them. Simple Man too, I think, is less lyrically than musically. I think musically Simple Man is one of the most beautiful things I think that we wrote together, and I think it really resonates. And then let's see what else. There really are so many that I love. Hearts That Can't Be Touched, again, musically, when you listen to that, the syncopation in it is pretty amazing. And actually, over the years, lyrically, I like it a lot more now than I did before. And another favorite would be Michael, Our Last Hero. And I think why is musically, and I think it's one of our epic songs. We tried to write an epic song, and I think we succeeded in doing that. That we wanted this kind of expansive, different tempo, a nice big transition, a big instrumental in the middle. And it was one where I really sat down with a purpose to write a lyric, that I really had in mind what I wanted in that song from start to finish. And so I think that, and then with what Tom did with it musically, just brought it all together. I think it's a great marriage of lyric and music. Things went south, and how was that? Okay. So I think Tom and I were really storming along, and I had these great aspirations, and I saw us being international stars and all of that. And Tom was still really struggling with not necessarily wanting to be a performer in the same way. You know, he was happier being kind of low-key, and I had my foot on the pedal as hard as you can imagine. I was headed this way. I also, I think I started to believe my own press, you know, that I listened to some of the wrong people, and I let my ego get a little bit of out of shape. And I think that I started to believe that I could pretty much do anything, which is ridiculous because I'm not a musician. I was working with a musician. How am I going to write songs now? So I do remember thinking, oh, well, I can just write with anybody, which is kind of a really immature approach because, you know, if you know anything about love, it's not that easy to find. And that's true with songwriting partners too, that I think I made some really stupid mistakes, made wrong decisions.
Mark and I had this connection. I mean, this was really the most prolific time in my life. You know, when I wrote all these songs.
I'm really proud of Tom and everything that he's done. When I first met him, he really was a shy, very reserved, I hesitate to say it, but insecure. And I've seen such a transformation. And I know Tom has done all sorts of like self-help things and tried all sorts of things. And I really see that he has left those insecurities behind. You know, that's not to say, you know, you don't feel a little stage fright once in a while, and that's only human. But I don't think that he has that kind of debilitating sort of, I'm too afraid to do this, so I'm not going to do it. So I'm really glad that we've remained friends because I've really been able to see Tom and myself grow throughout the years, and you know, we've changed and we've done this and that, but there's always this commonality that runs through it, and that's the music we wrote together, and I'm very proud of it, and very proud of him.
That sort of raised the bar for me creatively, and I've always wanted to like match that. And so anyway, Mark and I have this connection. It's sort of like family, you know, even if you drift with somebody in your family, a sibling, or maybe you don't have a lot in common, but you have that core experience that will always keep you close. I feel like that's what I have with Mark. Like we just had this wonderful experience, and we created all this like great music together, and that's the bond.
I got to tell you though, I just thought of another favorite song, and that is for my birthday one year. Tom wrote me a song called Happy Birthday Baby, and it was so complimentary, and it made me feel like $1,000,000.